Hey, I'm the CEO of Bone Tactical. At Bone Tactical, we offer private security contracting and consulting. We offer edged weapon design and development, strength and conditioning, and various disabled veteran outreach programs. My personal martial arts background is Mudokan Taekwondo, Muay Thai, and Jeet Kune Do. I have trained under Sensei Mike Hollaball for several years, and I consider Master Hollaball my biggest contributor to my particular style of martial arts, and definitely he's given me the base off of what I've built my own personal martial arts system on. I've continued to further advance my system based off of many altercations in real-world scenarios, 10 plus years of working security, and I have dealt with hundreds of close quarters altercations versus weapons versus one-on-one versus multiple assailants over a variety of platforms and areas in my life. This is Charles. He's a good friend of mine, also works with me through Bone Tactical Security and Strength and Conditioning. He's got 23 years of non-permissive environment specialty work, mostly dealing with altercations in hand-to-hand combat and edged weapons platforms. This is Tamara. She's also going to be working with us today as a demo, and she's going to be learning and also demonstrating some of the techniques with us. Today we're going to be discussing self-defense for women. The self-defense techniques that we discuss today can possibly be utilized by anyone, not just women, but it's going to be specifically geared more towards women versus a male attacker. And we're going to talk a little bit about the differences of why some things work better for women against men rather than just general self-defense. We're going to give a broad spectrum overview and discuss a little bit of everything. We're going to highlight some more specifics on future installments of videos. So situational awareness is a big deal for self-defense. In fact, situational awareness is one of the biggest deals that we can look at because of the fact that you win every fight that you don't fight. And I don't mean to say that in a way of not looking to be prepared. In fact, I'm saying that as a way of being prepared and preparedness and avoiding fights by being aware of your surroundings, being aware of what's going on and the world that you live in. We need to be realistic and understand that just because we live in such a great country in the United States, it's also a very dangerous time, even in good areas. You never know when you might be a threat of violence. In fact, violent crime is committed more than 2 times every minute in the United States. And it's important to understand that it's very likely that you may be the victim of a violent crime in your life or an attempted violent crime. This video series hopefully will get you thinking in the right direction to make some changes and be prepared for if that does unfortunately occur to you. So a little bit about situational awareness. When you're walking around on the street, when you're living your life, a lot of people these days are going to be on their cell phones, texting, talking on the phone, looking, doing apps, Instagram, whatnot, and not paying attention to what's going on around them. That is automatically going to make you a vulnerable target. If you are aware of your surroundings, then you may notice something before it happens and you'll have the chance to escape or evade the situation before it even starts. One of the examples that I can give you is when you're walking around the corner of a building. A lot of people will walk right up, turn the corner of a building, right next to the corner because it's easiest, it's the shortest direction. What I recommend somebody doing is take the corner wide. Really widen out that angle because if there's a threat around that corner, when you cut the corner sharp, that threat could be arm's distance away. And even a trained person may not have the experience or the reaction time necessary to deal with that threat. If you cut corners wide when you're walking, then you could recognize the threat in enough time to get away, get to your car, or set up a defense and strategy to defend yourself. Another thing you can do is, as you're walking, notice what weapons could be around you. You have to understand that the world that we live in is, on one hand, it's a very nice, lovely, all kind of good things place. On the other hand, it's a very dangerous place, even in the fact of the laws of nature are fighting against us. If you think about the things like gravity, well, when you're outside in an urban environment, the majority of surfaces on the ground are hard surfaces. The majority of walls are hard surfaces. You have windowsills, you have street posts, you have lamp posts, all kinds of things that are hard surfaces. If you're looking around also, there's bricks, rocks, anything that can be used as improvised weapons. In a situation where you're walking around and looking for these things, if something does happen, you can redirect an attacker towards the ground. You can redirect an attacker towards a hard surface impact of an object. These are things that we're going to discuss when we discuss targets on the body as well as weapons. So we'll get a little bit more into that. One thing that's important to realize is how you look to a potential attacker. I'm going to term this, as a lot of other people have termed it, be a hard target. What that means is you don't want to look like a victim already. You've already lost if you look like a victim. If you're walking around, texting on your cell phone, looking weak, looking like you have a lot of money, wearing a fancy watch, all these things mark you as higher on the victim list. But you must understand that this is a balance. You also don't want to look overly aggressive and hardcore or too intimidating, because then you'll be on the other end of the spectrum and you could be perceived as looking for a fight. So it's important to kind of remain gray in the spectrum here, so you're less of a target than other people and less intimidating than other people. You're much more likely to get left alone and not have to deal with any self-defense situations. You must also know your limitations as an individual. A lot of us have a false sense of reality with what we're capable of. I talk to a lot of women that say, oh, I can handle myself, I'll be fine. Oh, I'll be okay if something goes down, or if somebody attacks me, I can defend myself, I'll be able to get away. In a realistic scenario, a man is much stronger than a woman. A man has size advantage, and a man's upper body strength is going to be many times that of a woman. So it's important for women to realize that not only that they may not be on an equal playing field, but that you need to make some changes and be prepared to do what it takes to defend yourself, and not just have this sense that, oh, I can take care of myself. We're going to tell you now in this video series what you can do to make a difference, but the first step is realizing what's really going on. One of the things that you can do to be better prepared to defend yourself is develop a skill set. Skill sets can be developed through various types of training. And also, somebody who's been training for nearly 30 years like Charles, or over 10 years myself, if we quit training tomorrow and took a couple months off, our skills are already going to begin to diminish. Our timing will go down, our endurance will go down, our strength will go down, our power will go down. So it's not just, you don't look at training as oh, I'm trained. There's no level of achievement that you can reach and be set for life. It's better to look at training, in my opinion, as an ongoing process. I consider myself a student of life, and if we continue to train, then we continue to not only stay in shape and be better prepared for events, but we continue to develop a higher and higher skill set. And a skill set is going to be a huge advantage in a situation like this, knowing what you're doing versus not knowing what you're doing. But I need to say, before we even get into skills, that you just watching this video is not going to help you. You actually have to practice, you actually have to do it. You can do it on your own, but it's going to be a little more difficult. But the bottom line is, it needs to be done. You need to find a way to actually train and maintain your training. Enjoy the process of training. Don't enjoy goal achievement. That's my advice for this. Another reason that training is so important is because of a thing called stress response. We have a fight or flight tendency as humans when we're threatened, when our central nervous system is in high alert, so to speak. When in a situation such as a self-defense situation, when that situation occurs, we get a spike in epinephrine levels in our body, and this changes the way our bodies react. We lose a lot of fine motor skills. We lose the ability to have calm, cognizant thought patterns. We go to a trained reaction, hopefully, or you go to a fight or flight, either a run and scramble or just a wild, if you are not trained, you'll go into a wild panic of fighting. And if you're not faster than your target and than your attacker and you run, then you're doomed to failure. If you're not a better fighter and you decide to fight under a stress response, you're doomed to failure. It's important to understand that stress response, and one of the ways that you can develop that stress response is through adding stress into your training. And that's another way that training helps versus untrained. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of strength differences between men and women. But women are likely to be up to 80% as strong as a man with their lower body strength rather than upper body strength. If you have a guy like Charles or myself, we could be up to 10 times stronger than a woman with upper body strength. It's just the way that women's bodies are developed, and women aren't actually necessarily going to be weaker pound for pound than a man is. But women just lack the mass that a man does. Take myself, for example, I'm 250 pounds. You don't know many women with the same body composition, therefore women can't achieve the same strength because they can't achieve the same muscle mass. It's important to understand that, and when you're training as a woman, that your legs are going to be possibly even stronger than a man, but you're not very likely to have a stronger upper body than a man. That will help you in the way you train and utilizing your legs in your defensive tactics. Another reason that we train as far as training our physical capabilities is to maintain endurance, strength, power, body size, reflexability. All of these things are trained responses. They can be trained. Your endurance level for a fight is huge. Your ability for your blood to circulate oxygen through your body is going to determine how long you can fight and how effectively you can fight when that situation occurs. These are all responses that are going to be benefited from training, from staying in shape. And another reason why we train not just in the gym, not just martial arts, but we train physical aspects of real world running and cardio and all of the above. Flexibility is huge because you can't do certain techniques unless you're flexible. These are all things that must be considered for a training regimen. All right, the last topic of this particular segment is going to be your mentality, and it's also going to be the most important topic. If you do not have the correct mentality to defend yourself, you're defeated before you start. You have to be ready to impart swift and potentially deadly violence on your attacker. It's a mandatory must. You need to have the mindset ahead of time that if it comes down to it, you can maim, injure, break the will to fight, and possibly kill your attacker. That person is trying to do the same to you in that situation. If you do not have a stronger will to fight than the other individual and the mindset that you'll take it as far as it needs to go, then you don't even need to worry about defending yourself. You're just going to continue to remain a target, and this video series is not for you. Now I'm going to discuss the target areas on the male body and what's easiest for a female to attack on a male. The general rule of thumb is going to be your soft targets, your soft tissue areas. You also have small joint manipulation abilities, and there's even some other things that you can kind of get into as far as pressure points. But I'm giving a brief overview today. We're going to discuss what's most effective and what's easiest to go with. So what we're going to basically do is Charles will demonstrate the human anatomical position, and I'll go ahead and just discuss a few quick things that are random target areas. So with an impact weapon, or striking. This is going to be your hands, or a striking object. We're going to do weapons after this, so I'll describe an impact weapon more in full definition. But with an impact weapon, what we're looking to attack is going to be your eyes, your nose. The nose, you're going to be driving upward, trying to splinter the cartilage, and it's going to completely disorient your attacker. It's going to cause blurred vision and extreme pain. You can target the eyes. The eyes are very soft, very easy. It's easy to scratch with fingernails or even anything to the eyes. You have the throat, which is a very soft area. If the person isn't well trained, doesn't know to keep their chin down, the throat's very potential easy target to attack. There's a nerve cluster that runs behind the ear that is extremely easy to get a knockout with if you know how to strike it. Even a palm to the hand or any kind of an impact tool behind the ear is really going to be devastating. You have also the same with the temple. The temple's another area. The temple's actually more difficult to contact in many times, especially if you got a guy that knows how to fight, because he's going to be here, covering here, when a lot of guys don't know that they have to cover back there, and you can easily bypass and take an impact there. So, at working your way down, if you're possibly using an edged weapon or a knife, you have arteries running through here. You have a lot of connective tissue in here that's going to disallow him to use his arms. If you cut a major artery like a brachial, he has potentially less than 2 minutes to live, depending on where it's cut and how it's cut. Working the way down, you have solar plexus. The solar plexus is very painful to get hit in, but it's important to remember that it's not one of the highest attacking points, just because of the fact that you can actually train your solar plexus to be less susceptible to attacks. You have the liver here. Liver hits can actually paralyze, and you can gain knockouts through a liver hit. You have kidneys in the lower back. You have floating rib, which is going to be right here, the last rib. It's very, very painful if you know how to hit it. You have, working the way down, you have the groin. The groin is always going to be number one. It's going to be your number one attack area. There are people that train to be able to take hits even in the groin. And there are people that can take full-on hits from anybody in the groin. The thing is, those guys are few and far between, and they're not likely to be attacking you in a self-defense situation. So that's a completely different story. I just needed to mention that it is not a myth. There are guys that can do that. It's rare, and you're probably not going to encounter it. Working the way down from the groin, you have also some major arteries in the legs that are the femoral artery. Same as we had inside the arm, you have inside the legs. Okay, we have the carotid in the neck. Since we're discussing arteries, those are your three main arteries you want to sever with an edged weapon. Carotid, brachial, and femoral. Working the way down, you have the knee. The knees are high target areas. That's the reason that they're illegal to contact in the ring, in a fight, in a regular MMA or kickboxing match. You want to target the knee if you can. You want to scrape down the shins any way you can scrape down the shin. Kick to the shin. Top of the foot has a lot of small bones. Break those little bones on the top of the foot. They're very easy to break the bones on the top of the foot. I've broken mine countless times, so I know. That's the basic targets that I recommend going for on the male torso. Basically, the ranking system, in my opinion, is going to go groin, throat, eyes, nose, and work your way from there to the knees, shins, and feet. Okay, now we're going to discuss everybody's favorite part, weapons. So basically, I'm going to start with what I recommend for a woman to carry as far as for self-defense. I'm going to discuss a little bit about why, and then I'll get into what I don't recommend a woman to carry and why. First, what I recommend is carrying a pocket knife on your key ring inside your purse. So one of the reasons that I recommend carrying a knife like this is because when a woman has her purse with her, almost all the time, most women carry their purse, it's always with them. Also, your keys are going to be on your person almost all the time too, and you're gonna be likely to pull your keys out, or if you're not already likely, then I'm gonna recommend that you should pull your keys out in the most dangerous, potentially dangerous situations. When you're going from a public place to your vehicle, from your vehicle to a public place, or from your place of residence to a vehicle, from your vehicle to a place of residence, so on and so forth. The knife that I would recommend would be a Spyderco. And Michael, can you zoom in on that?
Got it.
And the reason that I would recommend a Spyderco is because you can see their little design that they do. They have a big finger hole right here, which allows the blade to protrude from the actual body of the knife. Now, when you're carrying your keys, say you're carrying your keys, you're walking to your car, and we talked earlier about fight or flight response. Well, when you get in that situation, you know, a woman's reaction, a lot of people's reaction is to go like this here. You know, you ball up, you do the human, you know, natural thing, which is good. Your elbows are protecting your rib cage, your hands aren't far from being able to protect your face. But what I'm saying is you're holding your knife, your keys are in your hand, your knife can be inside your hand, and you're coming here and you make that reaction. Well, when you make that reaction, this hand goes to the blade and this hand goes to the body of the knife. All right? As you assess the situation to see if the reason that you made this reaction warrants your knife being out, it only takes a split second for you to have a knife in your hand and be ready. Okay? Now, what I recommend from this point is going to be very general because we're not getting into knife fighting techniques at all, and we don't have time for that today. That's an entire video series of its own. But I recommend not extending the knife extremely far away from your body. I recommend moving and creating the smallest profile possible towards your attacker so the least amount of targets are there. Your weapon hand should be forward, and it should be in relatively tight and making just small circles and cutting anything he throws at you. If he's throwing his hand at you, you're cutting. If he's throwing his wrist, you're trying to cut those connective tissues in here so his hand won't work anymore. You're trying to cut the brachial artery. You're trying to, you know, do a lot of these things like that. Also, you want to be careful with getting really extended away from your body, because like I'll demonstrate with Charles here, if I get extended away, he can control the knife now. He's in between me and my weapon, and he can disarm the knife very quickly from me. Okay, especially somebody like Charles with an escrima experience. He knows immediately if I start doing these wild swings, he can immediately stop and disarm me. Okay, that's why I want to be in tight. If he throws a punch at me, I want to just cut just here and be moving away. What is the purpose of a physical altercation in self-defense? The main purpose is to get away and to survive to fight another day. So if I have the opportunity to cut and get out of there, if I think he's disabled, if he continues to follow me, then yeah, obviously I'm going to need to re-engage and continue to attack. Another thing is once I have that knife open, if he does just full bum rush attack me, okay, a lot of women might fall, might go to the ground. In this particular situation, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because my immediate reaction with this knife in my hand is I'm going to punch right through underneath his groin. Okay, watch what I'm doing. This knife now just cut his deadliest, largest artery in his body as it passes through here. He now has 2 minutes to live. Okay? At the point where I push through, I'm going to come back through and cut that other artery. At that point, the only thing that I have to do is survive for 2 minutes. And he might bleed out to the point where he can't fight sooner than that. So I'm on the ground, yeah, but he's dying and his blood's pouring out everywhere. So that's another thing to think about with a knife. The knife is going to be a little bit different than your impact tools. Now we'll discuss some impact tools. Weapon for self-defense, in my opinion, is going to be an impact tool. Now, I'll talk about guns in a second, and guns are awesome if you are very trained and if you're very good at using one. I'll get to that point when I talk about it. First, let me talk about impact weapons. Impact weapon like a flashlight. This is a Streamlight. I like Streamlights. They seem to always work pretty good for me. This one's a ProTech HL USB. I keep it in my truck. I use it when I'm working security. It's a little big to keep in my pocket every time, but I keep a Streamlight 2A in my pocket most of the time. The thing I like about this one is it's rechargeable with a USB port in my truck. It's got strike bezels on both sides, and it's also big and meaty in the hand. Something this size in your hand, just throwing a punch, is going to be devastating. I mean, the difference that it makes having something in your hand between not having something in your hand is not often understood. Also, it turns a ridge hand and a knife hand into a truly a weaponized. So if I'm coming here, ridge hand, weaponized. Knife hand, he ducks that ridge hand, boom. Knife hand, boom. Weaponized, all right? All those normal target areas are now much higher impact rather than just a fist or an open hand. So something like a flashlight in a situation where you may not be able to have a knife. Flashlight you can carry anywhere. I bring this thing on planes, okay? And it's a deadly weapon. I mean, it's a potentially deadly weapon. The next thing is a pen. A pen. But this one's a Fisher Space Pen, military police model. And it's also the same way. I mean, you can lodge that in somebody's throat. You can, it's going to cause pain. You're going to be able to break the will to fight much quicker with a pen in your hand than you would with just your fingernails or a hand. Okay? Another thing about knives. A knife, like this Spyderco, for example, it's extremely sharp from the factory. That's good and that's bad. If you are trying to do the maximum amount of damage, it's good, okay? But if me and Charles are fighting. Charles is a trained fighter. Charles has the will to survive. I'm slicing up Charles with this knife. It's not even slowing him down, initially. If I don't hit any major arteries, if I don't hit his eyes where he blurs his vision, if I don't hit connective tissue where he can't use his hands, if I don't hit arteries where he starts bleeding out, if I'm just slicing him, tissue damage, he's not feeling that until after the fight's over. This knife is so sharp and the cuts are so clean, if you're fighting somebody with will to survive, you have to consider that. So, possibly if you're not a talented knife fighter or you want a knife that's going to cause a little bit more pain in the process of doing damage, I recommend something like this. This is a Spyderco serrated edge. Okay, they have kind of their own little serration going on here. It's pretty tough. And this blade is a lot less of a weapon considered by law enforcement than that blade would be. That's something else you need to look at as far as your right to defend yourself. How it looks on paper is even a lot different than how it happens in the real world, because the bottom line is if you do get in a situation where you're in front of a jury for defending yourself, and the jury is looking at you and you defended yourself 100% legally, but you look like a jerk that day, they can send you to prison for the rest of your life. Why? Because the jury was having a bad day, because you look like a jerk, because that's the justice system and the way America is. Something to understand. So if I'm standing in front of a jury with this, that's a survival and rescue tool, okay? Yeah, it's less effective as a knife because I can't stab with it. I'm poking Charles with this knife and it's not going to hurt him in any way. Okay, but it's got a serrated blade, and it's going to hurt a lot more with a serrated blade than a very sharp knife will. Okay, that's where I'll go with weapons now. Here's my opinion on guns. Guns are extremely dangerous. Guns are the epitome of our society and our world's technological developments on killing technology, whether it's for hunting or defense or war. Okay, guns are very good at killing. That's a good thing if you know how to use one, but there's a potential for collateral damage. So if you're a female and you buy a gun for protection and somebody tries to kill you and you pull your gun out and you start shooting and you don't have extensive training and you're in a public place, or even if you're not in a public place, if there's a house next door and a bullet goes through the house and kills a little kid, those are potentials. You know, those can happen. You have to understand that a gun is a deadly weapon, and if you don't know how to control it very well, you shouldn't have one. Point blank, period. But we live in the United States. I'm a 2A supporter. I think everybody should have a gun. I also think everybody should train with a gun every day. But is that going to happen? No. If you don't feel like training, if you don't have the time to train, if you're too busy, don't get a gun. My opinion. All right, next. We can go to the hands, okay? The hands are better than fists, in my opinion. What? Hands are better than fists? Yeah, this is the street. This isn't the ring, okay? You're not protected. You're not taped. You're not wrapped. You have tiny little bones all in your hands. If I'm punching here and I'm tightening right before I hit, and Charles moves in and guards with his head, a Jeet Kune Do move, or even comes up with his elbow, as I'm punching, boom, my hand's broken. Okay? I've broken knuckles. I've broken bones in the top of my hand. If he moves in with his head, boom, I punched. My hand wasn't clenched yet. I was coming from here to here. All right? My hand's broken. I might need to use that hand later to dial 911. I don't know what's going to happen, but these little bones are extremely easy to break. And if you're not well trained, that joint right there moves around a lot. Okay? If you don't know how to aim with those first two knuckles and really keep a strong joint and tight, practice strengthening that joint, then I could punch here and my hand's going to go there. My hand's going to go there. It's not as effective unless I'm Mike Tyson. Then I'm throwing punches, okay? You're not Mike Tyson. What I recommend is for open hands is throwing here, all right? You have your behind the ear like we discussed. You have to the nose. If you throw to the nose, you can rake down the eyes, all right? You can throw to the nose, grab the throat, grab the trachea. You can pull that out with not an extreme high amount of pressure. A woman can actually do it, okay? You can ridge hand, knife hand, here, ridge. If he ducks the ridge, I can throw the knife. Okay? I can throw elbows. I can come from a knife hand to an elbow. I can come down with an elbow, up with an elbow, either way with an elbow, okay? And I'm talking about elbow strikes, not forearms. Forearm strikes are MMA legal, okay? The reason elbow strikes aren't MMA legal is because they're deadly. So point that elbow and hit with that elbow, all right? You have your knees. You have your forearms. I can come with the forearm. The elbow's better, but I can still strike with the forearm. You have your shins, knees. Knees are very deadly because of the amount, like we discussed earlier. Women are so much stronger lower body than upper body compared to men. So this movement right here, just coming here, clinching, boom, that's going to be one of your more powerful movements. Okay? Another thing about the clinch, when you're clinching, don't clinch here. He can turn and break my fingers. Clinch here, turn the forearms in. It turns into a choke while I'm clinching. Okay? All right. Also, we have tasers. Tasers are a decent self-defense tool. There's a couple advantages. One advantage to a taser is the noise that it makes. If somebody's not really super intent on attacking you, maybe it'll scare them off. It's possible. Maybe it'll cause other people that are in the surrounding area to look and see what's going on. Doesn't mean they're going to help you. I don't think a taser is anywhere near as good as a knife. I don't think it's as good even as an impact tool, depending on how it's used. But a taser is a viable option. There's also a lot of inner model variation between tasers. So if you're going to get a taser, get a good one. The difference between a taser that might just zap somebody and the taser that will put somebody down is going to be your price difference and your voltage difference, and just, whether it's a higher quality model or lower quality model. So that's all stuff to look into if you get a taser. One of the many and often overlooked weapons of the human body is the head. We discussed how there's weaknesses in the head. The nose is a weak point, the temples, behind the ear, the trigeminal nerves, your throat. Throat is potential to be impacted either direction, either collapsed or pulled out potentially. But this part of your head right here is extremely tough. It might be the hardest bone on your body. It's hard. It's very tough. And the headbutt is a viable option. So if we have Charles here, and if he's attacking me, I can very easily just headbutt him. I mean, and if you notice when I throw that headbutt, here's what you don't do. Come in. You don't telegraph the headbutt and then throw it, because Charles can very easily move out of the way and readjust his position and even use my momentum, get behind me, and I'm done. So again, the headbutt, it's here, okay? It's violent and moving right into it. Don't project anything. Also, the head can be used as a defensive tool, like we discussed earlier with Jeet Kune Do. It's elbows, you know, elbow here, okay? Headbutt here, you know? So he just punched me pretty hard in the head. It hurt his hand. My head is fine. That's good for the purposes of the video. All right, so that's going to be your basic weapons of the human body and your basic weapons that you can buy. Another thing that we need to talk about, as we discussed briefly, is environmental weapons, okay? The earth is a weapon. Gravity is a weapon. The ground being hard is a weapon. If Charles is attacking me here, and there's a windowsill right here, and I see him come in, and I can, you know, push him into that windowsill, okay? I can do various, you know, if he's bull rushing me and there's a light pole right here, I can just redirect him into the light pole, you know? I can use a lot of different things as a environmental weapon. If I see that there's a brick over here, and it comes to the point where he's here attacking me, but I noticed the brick when I was walking, I could possibly try and take him down, grab that brick, and take him out with the brick. Would that be better if I don't have a weapon on me, and he's bull rushing me? Yeah, maybe it's an option. That's one of the reasons you have situational awareness, and you realize, hey, you know, I noticed a brick back there. If I'm getting my ass kicked and I'm on the ground, you know, let's see if I can make it to that brick. That's, you know, there could be a stick, a rock. Let's just know your surroundings, pay attention to your surroundings, and don't rule out environmental weapons. What I don't recommend as far as weapons goes is mace. Why don't I recommend mace? Well, I use my real-world experience to teach what I teach and what I know. I don't tell people anything that I don't know and that I don't know that works. If you mace me and I'm trying to hurt you, I'm going to hurt you. Mace is not going to stop me. Mace will hurt me after the fight, and if the only thing you have is mace to defend yourself, and you're trying to defend yourself against me, you're going to end up dead. And then, hey, I'm mace later on. The objective here is to survive, to fight another day. You're not going to do that if you're carrying mace. My 2 cents, there's guys that are trained to be able to withstand mace. If you talk to a prison guard or anybody that's been in prison, you can hear stories, and these are, you know, documented cases of people who have been maced so many times they've built up a tolerance to it. If one of those guys is the guy attacking you on the street and you mace him in the face and he eats it for breakfast, what's your next course of option? You were counting on that mace to protect your life. It's not something worth counting on. That's my opinion on mace and pepper sprays. All right, weapons are really such a force multiplier that they can make the difference between life and death almost every time. There's really no excuse for not having a weapon on you. You should always be able to carry a weapon on you at all times. For example, Bone Tactical Kank Combat Application Neck Knife. I have this on me almost everywhere I go, and can't tell it's there, innocuous, and deadly.